What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Everyone knows that at this point, any Pokemon, if they wait long enough, will have the opportunity to get a new evolution, or some kind of regional variant, or even gimmick-based form change. And some of these are pretty marvelous, however, I don't think that every Pokemon should be tampered with. Some Pokemon are perfectly functional as they are now, and don't need any meddling. But it's not just any old Pokemon that truly deserve to remain stagnant, so let's take a look at which Pokemon should never be considered for specialized changes. Number 6. Spinda. I've never really thought too much about this Pokemon one way or the other, mostly because there are so many other cool Pokemon from Hoenn, but this is just about the ideal balance of unassuming versus having a special property that no one else does. See, Spinda, despite its rather bland overall look, has the unique setup of having the spots on its head randomly generated. Each pattern might only look like a few splotches, but where the red spots show up is determined by a hidden number in the Pokemon's code that's generated only once the encounter begins. And since these numbers are so long, that actually makes Spinda have literally millions of possible looks, even if they're not all that different from one another. So that's why I'm so bullish on Spinda here, because other more defined Hoenn gimmick Pokemon like Castform or even Kecleon do give off the vibe of getting away with an evolution of some kind. However, if Spinda ever did evolve, they would have to maintain or even enhance its famous spots, and I'm not sure that they would bother doing that. I mean, we didn't even see a Spinda on a mainline Switch game until 2021, and even then they didn't let you transfer them over to Pokemon Home, presumably because of the spot predicament. And if they brought in an evolution just to take those millions of patterns and sift them down to a dozen or so, it would be a travesty and strip Spinda of all of its charm. And this is coming from someone who did make a Fakemon Spinda evolution, but Pandizzy just didn't capture the same silly sense of a little rabbit bear thing stumbling about with an inebriated stupor who's so woozy that their double vision means that they can never pull off coordinating their looks the same as another. Number 5. Full-grown single stages. Now that phrase is a bit subjective, so what do I mean? Well, you can use your common sense. A Carbink or a Delivered certainly don't look like the culmination of an evolutionary line, and you can clearly see this when they go in to spruce up those Pokemon. Was anybody seriously buying Farfetch'd as a strong battler until they mercifully gave it an evolution? So the kind of Pokemon that I'm talking about are the ones that already look like they've evolved, even if they don't. I'm talking the likes of your Tropius, your Torkoal, your Skarmory, even Oranguru or Passimian. You know, those Pokemon that are too big to believably be in the Little Cup even if they are technically allowed to be. Because there are others that are missing something even if you can't put your finger on why, like how Stantler always seemed to be a little bit unfinished, and then when you're introduced to Weirdeer, you suddenly understand that this was the conclusion that we were waiting for. Now yes, there have been some alterations to such Pokemon. Duraludon just randomly got an evolution, but their slender body kind of makes them look like the previous stage anyway. And of course Absol got a Mega Evolution, or hey, just look at what they've been doing with Tauros. So they aren't listening to me fully, with even the likes of Snorlax getting a baby form added on, but I will allow that because it doesn't take away from the fully grown nature of those adult Pokemon, and it fixes the whole "that doesn't seem like it could pop out of an egg" conundrum. While I could maybe see Bruxish getting something, Turtonator, Drampa, and even Dhelmise all seem complete as they are, and don't need to have any extra add-ons. Save those for the Pokemon that are desperate for help, like Flamigo or even Pincurchin. And if you ask me, a point in my favor is that even when they do mess with perfection, like say giving Lapras a Gigantamax form, nobody even seems to remember it. Even though I love the transport Pokemon, I continually forget that it had this particular trait. And it's also gone forever now anyway, so my favorite ice type is back where it belongs, as an impeccable beacon of what a standalone Pokemon should represent, without any intervention necessary. Number 4. Pikachu-clones. This one would seem to be a bit redundant, right? The whole point of Pika-clones is to create a new fun offshoot of something similar to the series mascot. I mean, do we really need a different version of a Pokemon that's already sort of a variation in and of itself? Instead of making a Pikachu that can fly, they made an Emolga. Okay, maybe that's a bad example, but instead of making a metal robot Pikachu, they made a Togedemaru. and instead of making an evil Pikachu, they made more Peko. This has even worked with other similar animals like Pachirisu being a squirrel. And yes, I'm aware that Pikachu has already had numerous forms, but none of them really fundamentally change its type or even design, just adding clothes mostly, and the same should hold true for any Pika-clones. Instead of making a Dedenne grass type for some reason, they could just make a brand new electric rodent with that type added. There's no need to make a Plusle and Minun be fire and ice type, even if that would actually be pretty awesome. You can just make a brand new pairing to cover those elements instead. We still have about 12 more types that haven't been on any Pika-likes, so that's easily another dozen generations worth of options, and as you may have noticed, that's more than we have now, so we will be good for the foreseeable future. There's no need to muddy the waters by giving the Palmy line a regional variant when a new mole rodent that's half-ground type would work even better. So I'm sorry to say, Pichu, even after you get cut from the next Smash game, you won't be getting anything special to replace it. Number 3. Ditto. Sounds a bit odd since Ditto's whole thing is transforming itself, but that's the point. If you turn Ditto into something with more substance, its whole identity will be lost. The simple pink blob is perfect as a base to be morphed into anything else, but giving it legs or fingers or any more defined form would take away from its nebulous transformation capabilities. Now, I know that they did almost do this with the Gold and Silver beta showing us a potential evolution for Ditto that would be a steel type for some reason, but I think it's important to realize that they didn't go through with it because they realized that it would be a terrible idea to change Ditto's whole tactic and have it move on from its wonderful and unique gimmick. There are the illusion foxes that kind of fill that role, but they're just a facade that'll fade away. Having a Pokemon physically transmute its whole body is not only super cool, but necessary to achieve the breeding trick of being compatible with every other Pokemon. You couldn't pull that off with an illusion, so honestly Ditto is so versatile that there's really no reason to ever change it, because it can already accomplish more than half of the roster while still having the simplest design in the whole franchise. Ditto's identity is flawlessly tied to its slimy pink body, and having it move away from that would hinder its amorphous nature. The only thing that might work is making it closer to Mew to solidify that failed clone connection. Number 2. Base Stage Starters. This idea actually didn't even occur to me when making the list, because starters get different forms and such all the time, right? I mean, we get Mega Evolutions and Gigantamaxing, regional variants, and even random one-off alterations. But if you'll notice, those are only in the final evolutions. And whether intentional or not, I think this is the right call. Like we mentioned with Pikachu, he never really changes too much, and I think this is a brilliant marketing ploy to have all of the cute little base stage starters constantly looking the same. No matter what pose or scenario you see these Pokemon in, you can always know that they'll be recognizable and perhaps more importantly, profitable. You can shake up their final stages as much as you like, and have some sort of neat altered takes on how they could behave in battle, but it's a bit of a step too far to throw in a spiky purple Chikorita that's a poison type. You could maybe get away with that on a Superior, but if you're going to have a group of base stage starters on display, it really should be their familiar designs that you already know and love. And we're pretty well assured that this is the case because we've seen it with Rowlet or Oshawott staying their adorable, identifiable selves when they easily could have adopted the attributes of the new types given to their eventual Hisuian forms. So it seems to be a priority to keep the starters preserved in some kind of stasis, where a Piplup will always be a Piplup. Whether the Empoleon has a new Mega or regional variant or Battle Bond or what have you, they pretty much mastered a great system over the last few generations to have the best of both these standard friends that you can rely on, while also allowing the freedom to experiment with the final product. Everybody wins. Number 1. Unown. Firstly, yes, I am aware that Unown actually has many forms, near the top of all Pokemon with 28, but that's fine. What I'm saying is that there should never be anything to ruin that. An alphabet Pokemon should be just that, and be able to spell things in battle or even the world of the game itself, but I often hear that Unown should be hugely buffed in some way because it's not really a powerhouse Pokemon. Maybe something like Wishy-Washy with a schooling form to have a giant swirling tornado of letters, and as cool as that mental image would be, I think it misses the point of these Pokemon in the first place. It is true that Unown in large numbers are able to pull off some amazing feats, mostly in movies or television, but even in the games we've seen Arceus call upon them to spawn one of the creation trio, so there is something there. Perhaps the Unown are the base code of the universe, however, that's only when used in conjunction as a whole. But not every Pokemon is supposed to be phenomenal in battle. These psychic letters can only learn one move, and not even a super versatile one like Smeargle. Sure, hidden power can take on the properties of any other type, but you can't change it. So you just have to hope that your favorite type matches up with your favorite shape. I'm partial to the G letter myself, however, that's totally fine. The Unown are meant to bring up intriguing implications in the lore of the games, not dominate the leaderboards. Whenever you see them, you know that there's some connection to the ancient past of the Pokemon world, a sort of mysticism inherent to this area, perhaps imbued by a nearby legendary Pokemon that the Unown are drawn to as an immense power source. You can use them to translate and interpret these ideas from long ago, almost intrinsically tying them to the pursuit of knowledge. But the minute they get a mega form, becoming some kind of imposing vortex of alphabet soup to destroy opponents, they would abandon that higher calling to enrich the minds of trainers and further the cultures of long-forgotten civilizations in favor of chasing roles that other Pokemon can already do much better. I could see an argument for more forms like numbers coming in one day, and that'll be fine so long as they don't significantly buff these 2D characters, because I want their battle prowess to stay just as flat as their bodies, and leave these Pokemon in the margins they were designed for. So those are the top 6 Pokemon and categories that should not see intervention of any kind. Which Pokemon do you think are perfectly fine as they are? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded.